There's a specific kind of pain that no one talks about. Not the pain of failing when you tried your best. The pain of failing right when everything was finally working. You were close. Closer than you'd been in years. The relationship was deepening in ways that scared you. In the good way. The project was gaining momentum. Your health, your finances, your confidence, all moving in the right direction. And then something happened. A fight that came out of nowhere. A deadline you inexplicably missed. An illness that arrived at the worst possible moment. A decision so self-destructive you still can't explain it. And now you're back where you started. Maybe further behind. You've probably told yourself it was bad luck. Or you've gone the other direction and decided you're fundamentally broken. Too lazy, too afraid, too damaged to hold on to anything good. Both explanations feel true in the dark. Neither one is right. Here's what's actually happening. You have an internal thermostat, an unconscious ceiling on how much love, success, and happiness you can tolerate. When your life heats up beyond that ceiling, your mind doesn't celebrate. It panics. And then it engineers a way to bring the temperature back down to something familiar. Not because you want to suffer, but because familiar suffering feels safer than unfamiliar thriving. Hendricks spent 45 years working with high-functioning, capable people who kept destroying their own lives at the critical moment. CEOs, artists, people with every apparent resource for success. He called what he found the upper limit problem. And his book, The Big Leap, is one of the most unsettling pieces of psychology written in the last half-century, precisely because it refuses to let you keep blaming circumstances for what is, at its core, an inside job. What you'll understand by the end of this video is not just that you self-sabotage. You already know that. What you'll understand is why. The specific unconscious mechanism behind it, the exact moment it activates, and what it would take to override it. That last part is where it gets hard. Because overriding it doesn't mean being more disciplined or more motivated. It means confronting what you actually believe you deserve. That's not a comfortable process. It's not supposed to be. If you're willing to do it anyway, stay with this. In the next part, we go inside the mechanism itself, the thermostat that was set for you before you were old enough to question it, and why your brain has been defending it ever since. Most people assume self-sabotage is a motivation problem. You didn't want it badly enough. You didn't work hard enough. You weren't disciplined enough. That diagnosis is wrong. And it's wrong in a way that keeps you stuck, because it sends you looking for solutions in the wrong place. The real mechanism is almost the opposite. The sabotage doesn't happen when things are going badly. It happens when things are going well. That's the tell. If you pay attention to the timing of your worst self-destructive moves, you'll notice they cluster around moments of proximity to something good, not distance from it. The fight that erupts right when the relationship feels most alive. The procrastination that kicks in hardest when the project is finally gaining real traction. The self-destruction that appears exactly when the goal is almost within reach. This is not a coincidence. It's architecture. Hendricks describes it in terms of a thermostat, an internal setting that determines the upper boundary of how much well-being you can sustain before the system self-corrects. When your life exceeds that setting, the unconscious mind experiences something that functions like threat. Not the threat of failure, the threat of having too much. And it responds the way any threatened system responds. It works to restore equilibrium. It pulls the temperature back down. The critical detail is when this thermostat was installed. Not in adulthood, when you could have examined it. Not even in adolescence, when you at least had language for your experience. It was calibrated in early childhood, before you could think critically, before you had the tools to question what you were absorbing. You were reading the emotional environment around you with a child's precision and drawing conclusions that hardened into facts. How much joy is allowed here? How much success? How much visibility? How much love? Those conclusions became the ceiling. And here is what makes it insidious. The ceiling doesn't feel like a ceiling. It feels like you. It feels like your personality, your limits, your realistic expectations for yourself. You don't experience it as an external constraint that was imposed on you. You experience it as the natural boundary of what's possible for someone like you. Hendricks documented this pattern across thousands of clients. Lottery winners who lost everything within 2 years, returning almost precisely to their prior net worth. Executives who sabotaged partnerships at the moment of breakthrough. People in loving relationships who manufactured crises when the intimacy became too deep. In every case, the mechanism was the same. Life exceeded the thermostat, and the system fired. The thermostat isn't a character flaw. It isn't proof that you're broken. It's a learned boundary that once served a function, keeping you emotionally safe in an environment where having too much, shining too brightly, or wanting too openly might have cost you something. The problem is that you're no longer in that environment. But the thermostat doesn't know that. It's still running the same program, protecting you from a danger that no longer exists, in a room you left years ago. What built the thermostat is the question, and the answer isn't one thing. It's 4 distinct beliefs, absorbed so early and so completely that they feel like the structure of reality itself. In the next part, we'll break each one open and find out which one is running your life. If this content is making sense to you, click the subscribe button and subscribe to the channel. Thank you for your support. There is no single story that creates the upper limit problem. There are 4, and each one is a different architecture of the same prison. Most people are running at least one of them without knowing it. Some are running 2 or 3 simultaneously, which is why the sabotage feels so persistent, so automatic, so impossible to think your way out of. The first belief is the most fundamental. I am fundamentally flawed. Not flawed in a specific, correctable way, but flawed at the core, unworthy, defective in some essential quality that makes sustained success or love feel like a mistake, like something that wasn't meant for you. This belief doesn't come from nowhere. It was built from repeated messages in childhood, severe criticism, constant comparison, neglect that taught you that your needs were too much, or abuse that taught you that you were the problem. When success appears in adult life, the mind doesn't celebrate. It raises an alarm. This can't be for me. And then it finds a way to give it back. The second belief is quieter, and in many ways more devastating. I cannot surpass those who came before me. This is the unconscious loyalty to family. The sense that achieving more than your parents, outpacing the emotional or financial level of the household you came from, constitutes a kind of betrayal. Hendricks saw this repeatedly in high-achieving clients who consistently self-destructed at the threshold of real success. Not because they lacked capability, but because some part of them was still protecting a parent who struggled, still making themselves small enough to stay in the family. Consciously, they wanted to succeed. Unconsciously, they were honoring a contract they never agreed to sign. The third belief is built from something even more specific. A moment, or a series of moments, when happiness was followed immediately by catastrophe. You were joyful, and then something terrible happened. Your nervous system drew the only conclusion available to it. Feeling good is dangerous. Happiness is the thing that precedes the loss. So the mind learns to preempt the loss by preempting the happiness. It sabotages the joy before the catastrophe can arrive, because that, at least, is a form of control. You weren't destroyed by life. You destroyed it first. The fourth belief is perhaps the most modern. If I expand fully, I will be rejected. This one grows in environments where authentic expression was punished, where creativity was mocked, where emotional intensity was pathologized, where being too much of yourself meant becoming a problem for everyone around you. You learned that visibility is risk, that being big, successful, seen, means becoming a target. So you pull back, not because you lack ambition, but because part of you is still waiting for the punishment that came last time you dared to take up space. What unites all four is this: they are not truths. They are survival strategies that calcified into identity. They operate in complete darkness. You do not consciously think, "I don't deserve this," and then sabotage. You simply feel a diffuse anxiety rising as the good thing approaches, and the system moves before your conscious mind has a chance to intervene. Recognizing which belief is yours is not a comfortable exercise. It requires you to trace the sabotage backward, to find the original wound that made the ceiling feel necessary. But naming it is not optional. You cannot dismantle what you refuse to look at. And there's another layer that makes this harder. The beliefs don't announce themselves. They disguise themselves as circumstances, as bad timing, as personality quirks you've long accepted. In the next part, we'll look at the specific symptoms, the everyday behaviors and patterns that are the upper limit problem in disguise, hiding in plain sight inside your daily life. Self-sabotage rarely looks like self-sabotage. That's the point. If it announced itself clearly, if you could see the mechanism in real time, you would stop it. Instead, it arrives dressed as something reasonable, a legitimate concern, a stroke of bad luck, a personality trait you've simply learned to live with. The disguise is not accidental. It's the whole strategy. The most common disguise is worry. Not worry about something real. Worry that appears immediately after something good. You get the call you've been waiting for, and within an hour, your mind is spinning about something completely unrelated. A health concern that suddenly feels urgent. An old conflict that resurfaces out of nowhere. A financial anxiety that has no new information to justify it. Hendricks was precise about this pattern. The worry is not caused by the thing you're worrying about. It's caused by the discomfort of feeling too good. The mind manufactures a problem because it cannot tolerate the absence of one. Then there's the argument, the one that erupts in a relationship, right when the closeness has become almost unbearable in its warmth. When you are more loved, more seen, more at peace with another person than your nervous system knows how to hold. Something small becomes a flashpoint. Words are said that cannot be unsaid. The distance is restored, and some part of you exhales because familiar tension is easier to inhabit than unfamiliar intimacy. There's the illness, the one that arrives the night before the presentation, the morning of the important meeting, the week before the launch. You don't manufacture it consciously, but the timing is too consistent to be coincidence if you're honest about it. The body becomes an instrument of the limit, a way of creating a legitimate exit from a situation that your unconscious mind has flagged as dangerously close to success. And then there's the subtlest one, the minimization that happens immediately after a genuine win. Something goes right, genuinely, meaningfully right. And instead of receiving it, you deflect. It was luck. Anyone could have done it. It won't last. You are not being humble. You are performing a rapid automatic downward adjustment, bringing the temperature back to the thermostat setting before it has a chance to permanently reset. Because if you let yourself fully receive the win, you might start to believe you deserve more of them. And that belief carries a price your unconscious is not yet willing to pay. What all of these symptoms share is timing. They do not appear randomly. They appear at the threshold, right at the edge of the limit, when life is about to exceed what you've unconsciously decided is your allocation. Learn the timing, and you learn to recognize the mechanism before it completes its work. Hendricks calls this recognition the first act of resistance. Not a technique, not a mindset shift, just seeing it. Saying out loud if necessary, "This is the upper limit operating. I am not actually in danger. I am close to something good, and my system is trying to pull me back." That sentence, in that moment, is not a solution, but it is the difference between being unconsciously controlled by the pattern and consciously standing at its edge. Standing at that edge is where the real difficulty begins. Because the pull back toward the familiar is not subtle. It is insistent, physical, woven into anxiety that feels entirely real. In the next part, we go there, into the moment of expansion itself, and what happens inside you when you try to stay. Everyone wants to grow. Almost no one is prepared for what growth actually feels like from the inside. We imagine it as relief, as arrival, as the moment the struggle finally stops. That image is wrong, and it's wrong in a way that causes people to turn back precisely when they are closest to breaking through. Expansion beyond your upper limit does not feel like freedom. It feels like anxiety, not the sharp anxiety of immediate danger, the diffuse, sourceless kind, the kind that doesn't have an object you can point to or a problem you can solve. It settles into your chest without explanation. You are doing well, things are going well, and yet something in you is braced, waiting for the collapse that hasn't come yet. You scan for threats. You find reasons to worry. The discomfort is real, but it is not telling you the truth about your situation. It is telling you the truth about your limit. This is the moment most people turn back, not because they consciously decide to sabotage, but because the anxiety feels like a signal, like the feeling you get when you've made a mistake, when something is genuinely wrong, when you should stop and correct course. The mind is fluent in producing that feeling on demand, and when it does, you trust it. You've been trusting it your whole life. Hendricks was explicit about this. The ego does not surrender its territory without a fight. When you approach the boundary of the zone of genius, when you are about to live at a level that exceeds what you were programmed to tolerate, the ego fires every alarm it has. It projects images of failure, rejection, ruin. It manufactures scenarios of things falling apart. It tells you that the discomfort you're feeling is evidence of danger. It is not evidence of danger. It is evidence of proximity to something real. Fritz Perls, the psychiatrist, once said that fear is excitement without the breath. The physiological state of expansion and the physiological state of fear are nearly identical. Elevated arousal, heightened sensitivity, the sense that something significant is about to happen. The difference is the meaning you assign to it. One meaning says, turn back. The other says, this is what crossing the threshold feels like. Most people never learn to tell the difference. They feel the arousal and call it fear, and the calling it fear makes it fear, and the fear makes the retreat feel rational. The entire sequence happens in seconds, below the level of deliberate thought. What Hendricks found in his clients, and in himself, is that the expansion window is narrow. There is a moment when you can stay with the discomfort, breathe through it, and let the new level become the new normal. That moment does not stay open indefinitely. If you consistently retreat from it, the upper limit calcifies. The ceiling becomes lower, not higher, because you have repeatedly confirmed to your unconscious that the territory beyond it is not survivable. But if you stay, if you hold the discomfort without converting it into drama, without manufacturing the crisis that relieves the pressure, something shifts. Not immediately, not dramatically. The thermostat begins, incrementally, to reset. The new level stops feeling like threat and starts feeling like ground. That is the work, and it has nothing to do with motivation or discipline. It has to do with learning to remain in unfamiliar territory long enough for it to become familiar. In the next part, we get precise about how that's actually done. The specific moves that interrupt the upper limit pattern before it completes, and what it looks like to consciously choose expansion over retreat. If what you're hearing resonates with you, you'll find real value in my ebooks. Beyond the Shadow breaks down Jung's core ideas, while Dialogues with the Unconscious gives you a 30-day path to apply them in your life. Both are linked in the pinned comment. Most advice about self-sabotage is useless because it operates at the wrong level. It tells you to be more disciplined, more intentional, more committed to your goals. But discipline is a conscious faculty, and the upper limit problem is not a conscious phenomenon. You cannot outwork an unconscious mechanism with a stronger conscious effort. The mechanism will simply wait until your guard is down, and it will always find an opening. What works is different. It's not force, it's recognition. The first move is the one Hendricks returns to throughout The Big Leap. Learn your specific pattern of sabotage and learn the timing, not in the abstract, concretely. Look back at the last 3 times something good fell apart in your life. What was the moment immediately before it collapsed? How close were you to something you actually wanted? You will find a pattern. You always sabotage in the same place, in the same way, in the same emotional neighborhood. The specificity is important because vague awareness changes nothing. Precise recognition changes everything. The second move is catching the symptom in real time. This requires a particular kind of attention, not anxious scanning, but honest observation. When the worry spiral starts, pause. Ask, did anything actually change, or did something good just happen? When the urge to pick a fight appears, pause. Ask, is this relationship actually in trouble, or has it just become more intimate than I know how to hold? When the procrastination descends on the project that matters most, pause. Ask, is this task actually impossible, or am I approaching the edge of my limit? The question reframes the experience. It doesn't eliminate the pull, but it inserts a moment of consciousness between the trigger and the response. The third move is naming the specific belief underneath. Of the 4 Hendricks identified, unworthiness, family loyalty, the equation of happiness with danger, the fear of expansion as rejection. Which one is operational in this moment? Complete the sentence honestly. At the bottom of this, I believe I cannot have this, because bringing the unconscious belief into language does not dissolve it instantly, but it strips it of its most powerful asset, invisibility. A belief you can see is a belief you can question. A belief operating in darkness runs you without resistance. The fourth move is questioning the belief with the same rigor you would apply to any other claim about reality. Is this an objective truth or a story absorbed before you had the capacity to evaluate it? What evidence contradicts it? Have people with your background, your wounds, your particular history managed to sustain love, success, health? The answer, almost always, is yes. The belief is not a law. It is a conclusion drawn by a child in a specific environment that no longer exists. And the fifth move is the one that requires the most from you. Stay. When the good thing is present, and the anxiety is rising, and every pattern in your history is urging you toward the exit, stay. Don't create the fight. Don't manufacture the crisis. Don't minimize the win. Breathe into the discomfort of having more than you're used to. 5 minutes, then 10, then an hour. You are not waiting for the anxiety to disappear. You are training your nervous system to survive the territory beyond your old ceiling. Hendricks calls this expanding your capacity to receive. It is not a metaphor. It is a literal, incremental process of tolerating increasing amounts of well-being without contracting back. Each time you stay, the thermostat shifts slightly. The new level becomes slightly more survivable. The ceiling rises, not because you forced it, but because you stopped confirming that the territory above it was dangerous. This is slow work. It is not dramatic, but it is the only work that addresses the actual problem. Because the actual problem was never your circumstances, your discipline, or your desire. It was always the invisible boundary you were defending without knowing it. In the final part, we arrive at the hardest truth this video has been building toward, the one that changes what self-sabotage means and what it would take to finally stop. Here is the hardest thing to say about the upper limit problem, the thing Hendricks circles around and finally names without softening it. The ceiling is not something that was done to you. It was something you learned to maintain. There is a difference, and the difference is everything. What happened in childhood? The criticism, the comparison, the punishment for shining, the environment that taught you that having too much was dangerous or disloyal or impossible. That was done to you. You had no say in it. You were a child reading the room with the instruments available to you, drawing the conclusions that kept you safe. None of that was your fault. But you are not a child anymore, and the ceiling has required your cooperation to stay intact. Every time you felt the anxiety of expansion and retreated into the familiar, you confirmed the ceiling. Every time you minimized a win before anyone could take it from you, you confirmed the ceiling. Every time you manufactured a crisis at the threshold of something real, you chose the ceiling over the territory beyond it. Not consciously, not maliciously, but the choice was made. It is always being made. This is not an accusation. It is the only framing that gives you any power. Because if the ceiling is purely the product of what was done to you, you are a permanent victim of your own history. But if the ceiling has been maintained, partly, incrementally, by choices made below the level of awareness, then changing it is possible. Not easy, not fast, but possible in a way it cannot be if the problem belongs entirely to the past. Hendricks arrived at a question that reorganized his entire life. How much love and abundance am I willing to allow? Not how much do I deserve, not how much is realistic, how much am I willing to allow? The shift from deserving to allowing is the psychological hinge of the entire book. Deserving keeps you in the courtroom, arguing a case. Allowing puts you in front of an open door, asking whether you will walk through it. The answer is not obvious. Some part of you has been loyal to the struggle for a very long time. The struggle is familiar. It has a texture, a rhythm, a strange comfort in its consistency. Giving it up means giving up the identity that formed around it. The person who works hard but never quite arrives, who loves deeply but never quite holds on, who is capable but somehow always undermined at the critical moment. That identity is not nothing. It has organized your life. Releasing it is a genuine loss, even when what replaces it is better. That is what makes this work hard in a way that discipline cannot address. You are not trying to add a new behavior. You are trying to retire an old self, one that was built for survival in conditions that no longer exist, one that has been protecting you from a danger that stopped being real years ago. The upper limit will activate again. It will activate the next time something good gets close enough to threaten the thermostat. The question is not whether it will come. It will. The question is whether you will recognize it when it does, and whether you will choose, in that specific moment, to stay instead of retreat. That choice does not get made once. It gets made every time. If something in this video landed, if you recognized the pattern, felt the specific discomfort of being named, leave it in the comments. Not what you plan to do about it, what you actually recognized. That act of honesty is not small. And if you want to go further, the next video continues where this one ends. Don't stop here.